Hey everybody. I am on here because I am trying to do a little test to see if the what did that turn off? I just unplugged something and that turned something off. Um, I'm doing a little test to see about going live tomorrow because I have never gone on YouTube live and I don't want to mess up for tomorrow. And everybody's like, you were going to be on and you're not on. So I'm trying this out and I'm kind of trying to fix my little setup here. But I haven't told anybody that I was coming on. So I'm not going to really wait for anybody to come on because this is more of a test than anything. But I did want to talk about home rule and because home rules is definitely a major topic for discussion, and it will probably be a topic of discussion tomorrow in March 2nd's town council meeting rather. And I wanted to explain to people to could that have like honest questions. I mean, like, what is home rule? But rather than what is home rule, I think it's kind of important to explain how does home rule really affect you, like day to day, your daily life, like getting up in the morning, going to work, kids go to school, mowing your lawn, all those things. W- What does that mean in, real life to you? And I think that's how, we could really, um, make it easier to kind of understand that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be a good thing, but it just really depends on who's behind it. So I'm going to use a simple example of sidewalks, just for a real world um, scenario. So sidewalks. So in the town of Paw Paw, sidewalks are the responsibility of the abutting property owner. Meaning, if you own a house and you got a sidewalk in front of your house, you're responsible for not only cleaning it and maintaining it, but you're also responsible for making repairs to it, which, you know, is it could be really costly, especially if you got cracks, lifting, sinking, it's uneven, things like that. So it can turn into a town treating a sidewalk problem like their personal maintenance obligation for you and not necessarily a town infrastructure project. So I'm not saying that sidewalks don't need maintenance, they do. There's a certain way sidewalks should be built. They should be built with curbs, they should be built with the proper uh, sewer allotments that go into sidewalks so water can be. Channeled away so you don't have the breakage and things, but that's a whole other topic. But you'll see a lot of sidewalks in town are not necessarily built properly, so they will be prone to a lot of breakage. So this issue is a burden that gets assigned to homeowners and residents. And how does that enforcement affect you? Well, first of all, it can really turn into a surprise bill. Knock, knock one day on your door, and they're telling you that you need to replace your sidewalk. Um, that can be a very surprising. And the other thing is that it can seem very unequal by design because in Paw Paw, some houses, I mean, some streets have sidewalks and some streets don't. So the people that live on streets with sidewalks have this burden when there's houses without sidewalks that don't have this concern. Of course, they have the concern that there's no sidewalks for pedestrians, but they don't have the concern that of the responsibility for fixing a sidewalk that's not there. So there's like kind of like a built-in fairness problem right there. And thirdly, it really becomes a targeting tool for enforcement if they choose to do it selectively with home rule. If the town only enforces it on certain people and on certain streets, or right after someone speaks up, for example, in a town council meeting or posts something on Facebook, then the sidewalk ordinance isn't about safety anymore. It's just about getting back at people. That's all it is, and pinpointing people out. So once residents believe like the enforcement of sidewalks is a personal issue, the town loses all trust. And that trust is the currency of local government. If the residents don't have trust for their local government has completely defeated the purpose of its existence. So, and you know, where does home rule really fit into all this? Now, home rule is supposed to help towns operate more efficiently and solve local problems, and it can. But in practice, home rule can also increase the town's flexibility to design local enforcement systems and revenue too. So if leadership is responsible, home rule can help create a clean, consistent sidewalk program. But if leadership is sloppy, um, they're vindictive, they're political, home rule can accelerate just make the whole thing wrong. Faster enforcement, more citations, more fines, without any guardrails for residents to protect themselves. And home rule doesn't automatically create abuse, but it can increase the impact of a weak government. So if you have a weak mayor and you have a weak council, you will have a weak version of home rule, because you have to have a mayor and a council that listens to their constituents and actually takes in criticism and takes in feedback and tries to incorporate that into their policies. But when they choose to kind of turn a blind eye to it and just kind of go this separate path that they have chosen for the people rather than leaning towards the people for direction, that's where we get into bad governance, period. So, let's be very clear. Sidewalk repair compliance is a civil issue. Police shouldn't be used as a pressure tool for civil compliance. When residents feel like officers are being used to cite and intimidate people over these kind of disputes, you don't get compliance, you get conflict. I mean, like my husband, Greg, he got a warning for parking on the sidewalk in front of our house that we are constructing. It is a construction site, and the government knows that we are putting in a new sidewalk and we're putting in a new driveway. This has been known. This is not a secret. But they chose to give him a warning because he was parked on the sidewalk that's completely destroyed and was destroyed before we even bought it. It was destroyed when the town of Paw Paw owned it. And it was destroyed when Ken Hogan purchased it from the town of Paw Paw. So if the town of Paw Paw was so worried about it, and by the way, the mayor that we have now is the mayor that sold it to Ken Hogan, by the way. So if it was that important, you would think that the town would have fixed their own sidewalk that was in front of their own property. But yet that's not the case now. I guess they've evolved into this whole different thing. But public safety requires legitimacy. Legitimacy requires fairness, and fairness requires consistent rules and transparent processes. You can't just pick and choose who you want to go after because somebody gave you a nasty look. That's just not how it works. So if the town is going to make homeowners responsible for sidewalk repairs, it has to run the program responsibly and consistently, equitably, equally, like professionals, not like 2-year-olds that have a bone to pick with somebody because someone didn't say anything nice about them. Like we got to put that stuff aside. Things that the government can do, the town of Paw Paw can do, is Create a town-wide sidewalk inspection schedule. Same cycle for everyone. If you're not compliant, you're going to be issued a warning. It's not selective. It's just, it is what it is. Written repair standards. What counts as a violation? What repair is acceptable? What's the timeline? And the other thing is, the problem is that we have is the affordability part. So it's really hard for me to get past that homeowners are really responsible for these sidewalks, because not everybody just has a sidewalk repair fund laying around. So I don't know what they plan on doing, if they plan on doing payment plans, hardship options, cost sharing, group bidding, something. But the affordability factor is going to be a punishment policy, not a safety policy. And that's why I'm totally against homeowners being responsible for sidewalks. It should be the town of Paw Paw that has the responsibility of sidewalks. So they're all done the same way. They're all kept up. They have their vendors, they have the people that are installing them the same way throughout. You know what I mean? So not everybody's using 30 different contractors and 30, or 5 different types of concrete from all kinds of places, and measurements are all wackadoo and everything like that. And now you have like a quilt of mismatched sidewalks now in town of Paw Paw, and looks ridiculous. And then moving on, due process and appeals, clear notices. How do people, once they get a ticket, once they get a warning, what do they do? What is the what is their avenues? I mean, there has to be some sort of appeals process. And the published basic enforcement stats, how many notices have they put out? How many citations? What locations by street have they been giving tickets on? No private details, or it doesn't have to be any PII, personal identifiable information, but just enough information so people really know, or people kind of got an idea of what's going on. But, here's the truth. If the town can't operate this evenly, it shouldn't be enforcing it at all, let alone picking on people. So with home rule, expect sidewalk notices, citations, confusing enforcement. It's coming. And that's just one example, and that's just sidewalks. I didn't even get into blighted properties. I didn't even get into if you got your trash can outside by the street for more than 48 hours. I didn't even get into if you parked your car in your yard and not in your driveway. I didn't even get into if your kid is riding their bike on the street or the sidewalk, whatever is permissible. I didn't even get into any of that stuff. This is just about sidewalks, and that's already, frankly, a pain in the rear. I don't have trust in this government, not the one that we have right now, because I've seen local governments have excellent governance, and this one is definitely not an example of that. And it is sad to say, because this is a relatively small town. The issues that we have here are not difficult. They're not hard. They're not complicated. It's really easy to dissect the problem and come up with some really good solutions. And we have such a great community where we can, kind of just get together, have a good town hall, talk about solutions, talk about ideas that people might have. We're that small where we can do it. You know what I mean? I've worked in local governments, like Loudoun County, which is like the richest county in Virginia. You can't do that in Loudoun County. There's just too many personalities. The population is just gigantic. There's too much politics. There's just, it's all over the place. You can't do that in Loudoun County. but you can do it here because our population is not that big, but we all kind of want the same thing. So we all somehow, either you grew up here or either you moved here because you're looking for something slower, a slower pace of life, a simpler pace of life. At least that's why I moved here. Um, and I've noticed, like, when I'm talking to people in town, we all kind of just want the same thing. We just want to live our lives in our homes in peace and solitude, and be able to talk to our neighbors and be able to do things in town without being reprimanded for everything that we do. If we leave our trash can out for 3 days, nobody wants to be reprimanded for that. I mean, this is not a homeowners association. You can buy a house in a homeowners association, and you're buying a house in a homeowners association. We did not choose to live in a homeowners association. So let's keep home rule out of this so we're not living in an HOA essentially. Because once this happens, folks, I mean, if certain people in the government choose to make it a weapon, which is very easy to do, they will do it. I mean, I guess the only real remedy is to, like, make sure you send that Christmas card to the mayor every single year so you don't get a ticket for the rest of the year. But I mean, I think that's silly. That's not how it should work. You know what I mean? You shouldn't have to bring over a tin of cookies to the mayor and a card to prevent, from being picked on. So I'm gonna do another video probably, I don't know, tonight or tomorrow. I don't know. Depends on how alert I am. But I want to talk about actually what home rule is. I just wanted to give a good example of what it is, but I think I've been on here for 17 minutes, and I think that's way too long, anyways. So I will make another video. I will be back on here, but I just wanted to test out the video, make sure that it's recorded, it's on the thing. So like tomorrow when we're at the town council meeting, I can, make sure that I'm actually doing the right thing and people can actually see it from home. So I hope this worked and I hope this actually saves. So I will see you all later and take care of yourselves.